First of all, Simon Crean has obviously got passion for regional development, has a high focus on regional Australia. The other thing that I was quite pleased about was that there was an acknowledgement of what they call the patchwork economy and how that impacts in regional Australia, which is, I think, is a concern to all of us, and we're all aware of it. So it was good to see those two elements come out quite strongly and quite passionately from him. In terms of the major benefits, probably for me and Central West New South Wales, was the ability to work with other regional development areas, because it is a national scheme. There are 55 regional development areas in Australia, and so I was able to talk to the one from Arana, the one from Hunter, the Riverina areas, but particularly we were able to network and look at what we can do jointly.
You mentioned patchwork. Is that in terms of, okay, there are areas which are benefiting from mining, there are areas that are not benefiting from mining these days, and that's
part of the mix. I mean, the thing is that we've been very lucky in Orange as one town that we've had the mining industry and the gold mine as such has been a consistent provider of money and cash flow for some considerable time. Even with the expansion of the Cadia East has provided a lot of work for contractors and all sorts of people, as well as regular employment. So we've had a static cash flow, if you like, as a town. Other towns that may be more dependent on agriculture and where they've had floods and major events, natural events, their cash flows went all over the place. And you see that in the towns, and that's what he was referring to in that patchwork effect.
Are they looking to strong centres like Orange to be able to help the centres that are not getting a fair bite of the
That came out, that was quite interesting, because that's, I was pleased to hear that acknowledged, because that's fairly unpalatable politically to say some of the big towns are going to get bigger and some of the smaller towns, unfortunately, are either going to shrink or sort of live off that major town. Unfortunately, that's a reality, and that's not going to change. In fact, it's probably going to continue and get worse, because if you look at Orange-based Hospital as an example, we've got a linear accelerator there for cancer treatment. We're looking at a second one, hopefully, if it stacks up. You've got a sufficient critical mass in the medical industry to attract talented professionals to work there. Whereas if you have a smaller hospital in a small town, it's very hard to attract the staff. You can put all the money you like into it, but if you can't give the staff the backing and expertise and support, you won't get them.
So what do we do about these small towns that can't make it? We just let them die?
Well, actually, that's interesting, because no one actually came up with a solution. Although the suggestion was that if we sort of focus a lot more on agriculture, a lot of those smaller towns that actually survived on agriculture with wheat and wool and beef and other products, we need to be looking at the agriculture and developing it more and putting more research and more development into it. That may not necessarily involve more employment, unfortunately, as we know. We've seen that in agriculture over years. But it will certainly give cash flow to those areas, because we know that with a population worldwide, food is an industry that would be good to be in. Yeah, we had a discussion, and that was as a result of Simon Crean's suggestion that Regional Development Australia areas should meet and discuss projects that may benefit 2 or 3 regions. Following that discussion, I had a discussion with one of my counterparts from the Hunter region, and we talked about whether we should be looking at doing major work on the Golden Highway, for example. And it was initial discussion, but the point was, if we can get a good transport corridor across to Newcastle, which has got a good port and probably capacity and employment, then that would be a project that would go across probably the Arana region, because it encompasses Dubbo and the western areas, our region with a lot of the produce and material we need to get to the ports, and the Hunter region for obvious reasons. The Bells Line corridor or expressway, whatever you want to call it, has got a long way to go, and as you infer, the logistics just of the topography is going to be a challenge. Whereas the Hunter region, you can go around towards the Hunter, you've got a lot of large coal mines, Mudgee and over those areas, which will need transport, and we'll take that freight back down the Hunter Valley.
To Newcastle.
To Newcastle.
It seems to be that we have two situations at the moment where, okay, if we take the Hunter Valley, some farmers there are shipping their stuff, or they're taking their stuff via Yass and coming up the coast to Sydney.
Yeah.
And we're looking also at Newcastle. So would it be feasible to say that we should forget Sydney, going from the side through Newcastle and from the south?
I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's something that we need to do a serious analysis on, and you couldn't do it overnight, you'd have to do a serious analysis, but I think you're right. I mean, why would you voluntarily drive through a 4 million population city? You wouldn't do it voluntarily, so you'd look at shipping it around the outside. That sort of thinking, by the way, was interesting because they talked about Spencer's Gulf, and there's 21 ports apparently down one side of Spencer's Gulf, which, because there's no critical mass in all those ports, they're all non-viable. So if we sort of concentrated on one, we'll get a lot better value. And so the same thing I think applies to looking at Wollongong and Newcastle.